In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 233 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is showing up. Our quote of the day comes to us from Jeff Olson. Showing up is essential. Showing up consistently is powerful. Showing up consistently with a positive attitude is even more powerful. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. I'm excited for today's episode as I really enjoyed the conversation. Although our guest was raised in the entertainment limelight, he has dealt with his fair share of challenges along the way. At some point, Randy Spelling asked for help, and today he's paying it forward for others and coaching people to be their best. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Randy, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for having me on.
So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Am I ready to bring it? I'm always ready to bring it.
I knew that would be your answer. So kind of the theme behind our show and our number one objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you had either a personal no-quit story or perhaps a challenging time in your life where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
I have too many to think of just one. So basically what comes to mind is that I have somewhat of a give-up personality. Just throughout my life, when things got really hard, I would want to escape or run the other way. And this is what led me down the road of addiction for many, many years, and not being able to face things in the proper way. And my turning point to the not giving up was at some point I did give up. I mean, I basically just said, I threw my hands in the air and said, I don't know what to do, but help me. So my give up moment was actually asking for help, because the way that I was doing it and the way that I was trying to push through was not working over and over and over again, hence the patterns that we get in. So for me, I literally had to give up to ask for help, and that brought the help that I needed to make massive changes in my life. And from that point on, that sort of just letting everything go and saying, I don't know the way, so show me the way, and being humble enough to listen and to pay attention to the answers that I was getting was when I started to learn how to not give up and how to be tenacious and how to fight for what I want and what I believe in.
You know, I appreciate you touching on that, and I think it's pretty interesting how you spoke about your story of giving up in a sense and asking for help. And I think so many people get to that point in life, whether it's family, personal, business, whatever, where they get to that, let's call it that breaking point. And I think what you did is not only did you ask for help, I think most people get to that point and they do actually ask for help. But I think what you touched on is the most important is you were humble enough to listen. And I think most people understand and realize that they have to ask for help or they have to get some type of help. But the second, and I think the most important part, is actually taking that help and being humble and listening to it. And obviously, like you said, it was the turning point for you. So I appreciate you touching on that. I wanted to just quickly ask if you wouldn't mind just telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do today.
Sure. Well, my name is Randy Spelling, and I was an actor for many many years in the entertainment business. I also dabbled in music and ran my own independent record label for a few years and signed some artists and put out a couple albums. And all the while, just trying to find my place in the world, right? I mean, I grew up with an incredibly famous father, a television producer named Aaron Spelling, and was just trying to make sense of the world and my place in it and who I was. And um, as I said before, I struggled with addiction for many years. And shortly after he passed away, at what was I was 27. I just, everything changed. And I knew I didn't want to continue in the business the way that I was in it. I wanted something different. I wanted something different for my life. And I'd always been interested in psychology and human behavior and feelings and emotions. And so I started out on my own journey, finding out what I wanted to do. Someone suggested life coaching. It sounded good. I'd never heard the term before. Enrolled in a course, and that started my education to become a life coach. And for the last 12 years, I've been helping people to achieve more freedom. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, spoke in front of thousands, and am working today to help people find the things that are holding them back so they can achieve the level of success, not just money, but a part of, but achieve the level of success that they want out of life so that they can be as happy as possible.
You teed that the next question up perfectly. So follow up to that is how do you personally define success, or what does success mean to you?
Success to me, I get an image. Success to me is when I'm with my daughters, looking at them in their eyes and playing with them and not thinking about any stresses that I have or what may happen later or tomorrow or 3 years from now, but being in the present moment. And I know that sounds trite and very self-helpy, but it's the truth. And listen, I've come from money. I've played in the world of money. I've played in the world of not having money. I've worked with highly successful people, and people who have come from very little. And I can tell you, obviously you know this, but I can tell everyone here that money does not make someone successful. There's an achievement factor where the way that most of society defines success is through money or power or achievement. And I think it's just an old paradigm, because at the end of the day, that person may do really well in business and be a hot mess in their life. Or they may achieve so much, but be lonely when they go to bed at night, or be anxious or depressed. And for me, I don't know what any of that has to do with anything, why any of that matters if you don't feel good in the life that you're living right now.
I love that question, and the reason we selfishly ask it is because there is no right or wrong answer, and what success means to you could be very different to me. But I absolutely loved how you touched on that money does not make someone successful. Now, you're 100% right in the sense of there's an achievement component to it, and you have to have some form or some type of money to have car and a house or those type of things. So don't get me wrong in that regard. But I think you said something that resonates to me is I know so many people, so many clients that I've worked with that are quote unquote successful from a business perspective or level of achievement in their field or industry, having a nice house and things like that. But they are unbelievably unhappy people in their after business or before business life. So I'm glad you touched on that, because I think it is really important. And what you described of, or how you described it with your daughter, I don't think it's any way self-helpy. I think it's what life is about. Is life is about those moments and those things. But the reason I again go back to that question and why we like it is someone who doesn't have kids or doesn't have a significant other, they define success to themselves in a different way. So I'm really glad that you touched on that. One question we ask everybody and it's a kind of interesting question. I'm curious to get your response. Is if you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what word would you use?
Corny. um, I am known to be corny. I will take two words and put it together to make a funny word. I'm always, creatively thinking of things that are fun and trying to laugh and enjoy. So, my father had that. He kind of had that fun sense of humor, and so yeah, my word is corny.
I love it. I think we've conducted over probably 250 interviews now, and no one has not only not said that word, but nothing even close to that. So that's awesome.
What's yours?
I would say disciplined. That's probably it has changed over the last little bit, but I think discipline for me is something that's been really important. And but the other word that we use a lot with our company, we have a clothing line on the back of everything is hashtag accountability. So I would say accountable or discipline if I had to.
Nice.
So one of the things we often ask, and I love this question, is if there's anything that you're currently reading or perhaps you've read recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
I recently picked up a copy of the 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma, and I'd heard about it, and it interested me. I hear so much, obviously. I mean, I already know that waking up early is a key factor in gaining more time in your day. But I'm interested to hear other people's philosophy on how it's helped them, why it's worked, and given that your word is discipline, the discipline that it takes to break the pattern of waking up at a certain time, being productive right when you wake up. All of that fascinates me because I'm a researcher. I can't tell people to do something if I haven't done it and know that it works. And so I've played around with morning routines and hitting snooze versus not hitting snooze, waking up right away, what I do when I wake up. And I think more and more research is going to come out that is a game changer on how we start our day.
That's awesome. Ironically, I had Robin on the show as a guest, and it was right around the time when the book came out. And it's funny you said that, being a researcher. I'm the same way. And the reason I asked that question about the morning routine is because it is why certain people are so successful. And a couple people, ironically, over the last 6 months have spoken about the importance of actually beginning your morning routine the night before and how you kind of end that evening going into the next day, whether it's drinking water, meditating, laying your gym clothes or other things like that. And I think similar to you, I like to research certain things and do things. And I had a guest on probably about a year ago now that was very disciplined with freezing cold showers. And to my credit, just like you, I had to try it so I could talk about it. And I do it every now and then, but I'm definitely not a fan.
I do it every shower. Every time at the end, I will try and do at least 45 seconds to a minute. Here's what I found about that. Funny enough, I've actually been playing around with using that tool on my children. And again, I haven't read about this, but to have them slow down their nervous system response. And something that I played with, try this next time, is that anticipation of when the water gets really cold and it's going to be cold.
Oh yeah.
And it's almost like you have the reaction before it even happens. So you start to tense up. And so what I've been practicing is breathing beforehand. I start to breathe and do a certain type of breathing to calm myself. So when I turn the cold water on, nothing changes in my breathing and I continue to stay relaxed. And it's really funny. I've tried it with my daughters and I've watched them when one of them will have a really high temperature and we have to do a cold towel treatment. I'll have them do the breathing and relax and look at me in the eyes. and they'll scream and cry in anticipation. But the second they lock into that moment of breathing and slowing down and calming themselves, once they get in the cold, it actually doesn't change. It's kind of fascinating.
No, it's funny that you touch on that, because there's so much science behind how your body anticipates certain things, and how, like you said, you almost react before it happens. And I think once you get your calming mechanism down, and once you get the breathing, which is why I love asking that morning routine question, because a lot of people talk about certain things as affirmations, meditation, doing some of that breathing before they get up out of bed. And I think it's so neat, because, and why I like that question is, it's just like the success question. There's no right or wrong answer. And you, for example, you might love waking up at 5:30 in the morning, and another guest might be waking up at 3:30 in the morning because they have a commute or something like that. So I just think it's really interesting in that. Before we went live, you touched about an exciting program that's coming out in mid-October, and I just wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind telling our listeners not only a little bit about that, but more importantly, for those that are interested, where they could find some information about it.
Sure. So I lead a few groups. The one that's starting in October is geared toward people who want to find their path to success, how to become more successful. And I mean this holistically. I do mean it in terms of money, or starting a job, or up leveling in some way. But I mean, it's all the emotional components around that. And how to do it with empathy, how to hone your gifts of emotional intelligence, awareness, letting go of things that you may not have let go of in your life, and finding the patterns that hold you back so that you can reach the level of success that you want.
And what's the best way for those people to find out more about that, but also other programs you offer?
My website, randyspelling.com.
Awesome. And I was curious, if I could give you the opportunity to have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick and why?
Anyone dead or alive? I don't, that might change. My answer might change on any given day. Right now, in this moment, Gandhi.
I think it's good to have a change, and I think it's kind of similar to some of those questions being, not open-ended questions where there is no right or wrong answer. I think for myself, quite a few people have flipped the script on me and asked me that question, and I know for a fact my answer over the last 2 or 3 years of doing the show definitely changes on based on what I'm going through, and I think it's natural to have different things. So, if you could go back, and I know this was, a year or two ago, but if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself just one piece of advice, what would that have been?
I would tell myself to hang in there and to know that things change, because there were times that I didn't really, when you're so enmeshed in something, embedded in something, it's hard to know that that's going to change. And really, that may have been the life raft that I needed, is that to hang on, it will change.
Now that is good advice, and I think so many of us probably need that in multiple different times in our lives. And I think when you're in something, when you're in the fire or you're in the storm, it's really hard to see and understand that conceptualize things are going to get better. I wanted to get your perspective on this question. I think social media allows us to see different people in so many different ways. And I was curious if there's anybody that you're following, whether they're famous or not, that you look up to, and just curious as to why, if there is anybody.
I've been following him for a while, but I always get a kick out of Gary Vee. I mean, there's quite a few, but the thing that I like about him is his message is somewhat masked, but I find him really interesting in that he has a self-help message in a very unique way, and in a different way that relates to a lot of people. But at the heart of it, there's a real caring deep message there.
It's funny that you say that. I was just having a conversation last week with a client of mine, and we were actually almost talking about the same thing. Is he's a little bit rough around the edges as far as some of the language he uses, and sometimes he's very black and white. But we were just ironically talking about how deep down he cares about helping people, and even though sometimes he delivers a message in a little stern way, he's doing it because he wants to help people. And when you see him take live questions at different events and things, he actually gets down to it and asks some of those questions. Well, Randy, what exactly are, well, why haven't you tried this, or have you thought that? And I think it's interesting. And I like asking that question because for me, one of the things I think people miss the boat on completely is how social media can be used as a positive tool. And I don't want to talk about the bullying and those type of things, because I think that those type of things are obviously horrible, and there's been some terrible stories. But I'm talking about the ability as adults to control who you follow, what you see, why you see it. And I talk about all the time is, if there's somebody that's putting things out there that are not something that you want to see, and they're not positive, and they're not helping you or uplifting you, you can just simply mute that person and not follow them anymore. You don't have to unfriend them or, send a message that, I hate you. But I think, there's so many ways to look at it, which is why I wanted to ask you that question. And I found you, and we connected via social media. And, to be very candid with you, I enjoy the stuff that you post. And I think it's important to surround yourself with people that, uplift you and take you to that next level. So I just wanted to get your perspective on that. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I just said that very same thing to somebody yesterday. I said, you could mute someone. And then I stopped and I said, listen, I'm not begrudging social media. I use it as a tool. I think it's great in many ways, but our time is so precious. And really that's it, right? I hear so many people these days. It's like, I'm busy. Oh, things are busy. How was last week? Busy. How was yesterday? Busy. Our time is so precious that if we start to look at our consumption habits and what we're consuming, I totally believe that we are what we eat, and we are what we drink, and we are what we listen to. And this is why if you read a lot of self-help books, you're going to start to sound like a self-help author, right? If you read a lot of sci-fi, that goes in. If you play a lot of video games, this is how you're going to see the world. And so choosing how you consume information, if there is anyone where you're consuming and it's not uplifting you, it's not helping you, it's not helping you feel the way that you ultimately want to feel, you have to renegotiate, mute it, get it out, but be very protective of your time. It's sacred.
I love that. And part of the interview, and we talked briefly before, is, we have these conversations, and obviously I didn't know where you were gonna go with that question, but it led to obviously what we just spoke about. And I'm so appreciative and grateful that you touch on that, because it's something that we often talk about, not only with our show, but also from stage and the clients and companies we work with. Is in today's day and age, technology is amazing in so many ways. You have the ability to connect with people. You have the ability, God forbid there's an emergency, medical technology, the ability to take things to a certain level, start a company, start a charity. But on the flip side, I absolutely love what you said, is social media is a tool. It's 100% a tool. And the only question for everybody and every single one of our listeners is, what do they do and how do you maximize that tool? And I don't want to in any way come across like I have a timer and I only use social media for 12 minutes a day, and because I'd be lying. But I can honestly say that over the last probably 6 to 12 months, I'm really looking at my usage. And like you said, I use it for a tool to connect with clients and to connect with businesses and people like yourself. But there gets to a point where you have to ask yourself, is this helping me right now? And is this the best use of my time? And for me, I've been asking myself that question a lot, is after I'm on social media, maybe I connected with some people, made a post, I say, okay, now, is it time for me to get off and do something else? And I'm trying to be more conscious of that.
Yep, absolutely.
So one of the words we use, and as I said, is we have a clothing line. It's everything is #accountability. I wanted to just get your perspective on what the word accountability means to you.
Accountability is showing up. It's taking responsibility. It's following through. I mean, this is why every coach will always talk about accountability. You know, when I first went to school to become, it's like that word was thrown out all the time, and it's really just showing up. It's being accountable, right? And we always think of it's being accountable to someone, but there's a much bigger conversation around accountability, because everything that you say you want to do, or every time you say I'm going to do it and you don't do it, it doesn't matter if you never tell anyone. You know that, and your inner scorekeeper keeps score. And if this happens over and over and over and over again, people start to lose belief in their abilities. They start to lack confidence. And so accountability, we are our own accountability buddies. And so being accountable to self, to me, is the North Star. It's the most important.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the terms we use is the self-accountability mirror. And if you and I were accountability buddies or accountability partners, I might be able to, fudge the truth a little bit. Say, hey, Randy, I followed up on those 3 people that left messages, and maybe I only follow up on 1 or 2, but I could probably get away with that. But what I talk to my clients a lot is when you look in that mirror, you can't lie to that person. That person's not going to lie back to you. You're not going to look at that person in the mirror and say, you know what? I went to the gym today when you didn't. So I'm glad you touched on that, and I liked how you spoke about that North Star, because before I can be really and fully accountable to you, I have to be accountable to myself. And I think the term you use is keeping your inner scorekeeper. I think that's really important, because what you do to yourself first and foremost gets projected onto anybody and everybody. And like I said, you can't lie to yourself. You can fib and maybe lie to other people, but when you look at that self accountability mirror, they're not going to lie back to you. So before we finish up here, I just wanted to, again, ask you the best way for our listeners to connect with you and follow you. And also, are you active on social media so they can check you out as well?
Yes, I'm very active on social media. My social on Instagram is Randy Spelling. On Facebook, it's Randy Spelling Coaching, and my website is Randy Spelling. I kept it simple.
No, that's and you got it probably before anybody else did, right?
No, I had to buy my name. Can you believe that?
Seriously?
Yeah, not on Instagram, but I had to buy my name. I believe it was $700 or something years ago.
That's actually interesting. I know a gentleman threw into somebody else, and like 10 years ago, he went out and bought all different domain names because he thought that was coming down the road, and he's actually made quite a bit of money from people that want to buy, like, for example, BMW of Los Angeles, or, New York City Mercedes. So he went ahead and did that. So I definitely, I do believe it. And 700, not that it's not a lot of money, but I've heard some crazy stories about some of the prices people had to spend to get certain website names.
Oh, I'm sure.
And then last question for you is, I wanted to see if you have some parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Any parting words? Any specificity there?
Nope. It's your show. You're the cowboy. So whatever you say goes.
Show up. Show up, and show up your best, brightest self. And the context on that is, to come full circle, we talked about success. And success is a long-term game. Success, it's like purpose. It's this word that encompasses your life. And a lot of times people get so frustrated and so anxious or so depressed around success, not having done enough, not being enough. So showing up and being your best, brightest self is, how are you showing up in this very moment? And if you can start to break down success into moments, for the next 10 minutes, I'm in this conversation. How do I show up my best, brightest self? How do I hold myself? How do I carry myself? Right? What's most important for me to focus on so I can be clear and present with you? And I think that if we can start to gain successes in moments, it opens up the field for a reference point of, okay, wait, I was successful there. Wait, today I was successful 5 different times, as opposed to this one overarching theme of success that it seems like everyone is trying to rush to get to but can't quite arrive at.
I think that's great advice. And to your point, I think in different days we show up different times, and I think it's great parting words to leave this. So I wanted to just again thank you for your time, and I would highly recommend that our listeners connect with you and follow some of your stuff. And for those that are interested, Randy's program is in the middle of October, so a little bit less than a month from now. So thank you so much, and I hope we can definitely connect again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to episode number 233. I really had a lot of fun speaking with Randy. We touched upon numerous topics: the 5 a.m. club, success, accountability, and social media, just to name a few. We definitely have a lot in common, especially when it comes to his definition of success. I always say and have believed that money is important to be able to live and function. But like Randy's definition, there's a sense of achievement in it, but money does not guarantee success, nor does it guarantee happiness. I absolutely loved how Randy described that social media can be used as a tool, but he also reiterated just how precious our time is. In his parting words, Randy stressed the importance of showing up, and when we are in certain moments, be there fully and focus on that moment and that moment only. So as you go for your greatness today, show up. Show up as the best version of yourself, and no matter what you are doing or who you are doing it with, give your best effort to that one exact specific moment. I would like to end today's episode with a quote from Confucius: "He who chases 2 rabbits catches neither." And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, "It's always too early to quit."